All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. It is me, Jackson Wheat, and you're on my channel. In case you didn't already know that. Well, joining me today is our Lord and Savior Peter, who is hosting and co-hosting as always, and we have a surprise guest today. We have Nestlig, who I'm sure most of you probably know. Nestlig is very helpful to me. He edits pretty much all of my scripts. So we've been doing this for like what 5 years now.
Oh yeah, I think
5 years, something like that.
I remember I joined for the updated video on chromosome 2, and I don't know when that was published. I think it's almost 5 years ago.
Probably. That was like 4 or 5 years ago, which is crazy to think about.
So after 5 years, after 5 years, finally the Dutch have taken over Jackson's channel completely.
It was only a matter of time. We have a super chat from Vandalia, 1998 for $4.99. It's just too bad Piltdown Man and Nebraska Man still confuse human ancestor professors to this day, and we never learned anything from other events. Indeed. We'll discuss that in detail today. Yeah.
Shall we today not talk about things that we've learned? Because I had a horrific experience yesterday. I spent an entire afternoon with a flat earther. Not only a flat earther, but also believed in the Illuminati. Could tell me an awful lot about the Freemasons and chemtrails.
Was it online?
No, in real life.
In real life. Even worse.
Yes.
Even better.
I did not know that we have people like that in the Netherlands, but apparently we do.
Yeah, apparently some of the QAnon also got like flood over from overseas to our country.
That also
apparently,
that also was mentioned in the conversation. My head still hurts.
There's like the idea that when they accept one crazy conspiracy theory, it's just all downhill from there. That what's stopping them from
it's a pipeline. Once you go sliding, you slide all the way down.
Right, exactly. It's like
the worst thing that I
anti-vax,
heard,
and then the next thing is like
Yeah, the worst thing that I heard is I said, but you can look things up on the internet, and she said, I did. Have you seen what's available on YouTube? And then I wanted to bash my head into the brick wall right next to me because I thought this is not going to go well. So we spent an entire afternoon looking up things on the internet, which was a lot of fun. Didn't help, but I had fun. I wish I had recorded it.
That does sound like a trip.
Yes.
Yeah. That would be a trip. There's a video, for anyone who doesn't know, there's a video of me. I'm interviewed by a flat earther while I was at LSU Baton Rouge. So this guy has like a he's got a tripod. He's got the camera on it, and he's going around talking to people about like the flat earth and evolution and all sorts of stuff. And he's bonkers crazy. Well, anyway, he goes down to the Union, which is the big central building on LSU's campus, and out in front of that is what's called Free Speech Alley, which isn't an alley, so sidewalk. But that's where lots of different clubs and stuff will like hawk their wares and everything, and they're occasionally screaming preachers to yell at kids and all that. Well, anyway, so this guy is standing out there, and I just happened to pass by, and I stop and talk with him for a little while, and so he takes a video of me, and then he uploaded that on his channel, and I thought that was hilarious because there I am on somebody else's channel, just out in the wild.
Yeah.
I think something like that happened with Hugo, with with Hannah and Jake, from the Bible Reloaded. That's Hannah and Jake. Check out their channel; it's really cool. They
Yep.
they like ran into some crazy Bible thumpers or something like that while they were out, and they're both on camera talking to them, which is very funny to me, anyways.
Never happens to me.
All right.
All we have here in the Netherlands
Well, I did
is Jehovah's Witnesses, and I ruined that
happened to me.
a long time ago. They apparently keep track of things that they encounter, and at some point, this was when I was in my early 20s, so. But I was so sick and tired of them ringing the doorbell every Sunday morning. And this was when I just moved out and had my own house. So I borrowed a t-shirt from a friend of mine that had big letters saying, "I'm the son of the devil." And I wore extremely saggy underpants, had one hand in my underpants, and opened the door and said, "What?" And that was the last time they rang.
Oh no,
Jackson, do you have by any chance a cable, like an Ethernet cable for your?
So
because
to
me you're lagging, and to some of the audience members you're also lagging.
Well, I can just turn off my camera if that'll help. But the funny thing is, my Ethernet cable is plugged in to my laptop, but it's okay. Yeah, you guys know what I look like.
And now everyone's looking at me, and I'm the ugliest guy in the room. Your audience is not going to like that.
That's still debatable because I haven't shown my face yet. So yeah.
So anyway, so let's get to the book. So this book I had, which you can't see right now, which Peter will show momentarily, I think. This is titled "Did Man Get Here by Evolution or by Creation?" It was published in 1967 by Watchtower. It was gifted to me back in high school, and we are just going through it line by line, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, and picking apart all the hilariously horrendous ways it is wrong about everything. So get to the story. So we are continuing with the chapter we were.
I'm nearly there. I'm there.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. There we go.
All right, perfect. So we're continuing with chapter 8, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it was chapter 8.
We're continuing with chapter 8. It's pretty long. So now we're going to learn about the evolutionary frauds, which is our favorite.
And how to slander the Dutch people. Really?
How to slander the Dutch people, exactly. Yeah. All right. Quote, "So, contrary to what true scientific facts would allow, evolutionists have given fossils the appearance that suited their preconceived theories. That is why it is possible to read information such as the following that appeared in the New York Times in 1959. Quote, "The Peking Man, a 500,000-year-old fossil, has had his face redone for a starring role in a Chinese documentary film about his life. A new and supposedly more lifelike reconstruction of the head of the prehistoric human was reported." Close quote. Such deceptive alteration of evidence is not new. There are many other examples. When Professor Dubois, the Dutch surgeon, discovered Java Man in 1891 to 92, where did he find the fossil remains?
When you don't have enough Dutch people, when you don't have enough Dutch people on your show.
Exactly. There you go. The Encyclopedia Britannica tells us, quote, "The 5 fossil fragments were found: a skull cap which outwardly had the form which might be expected in a giant form of gibbon, a left thigh bone, and 3 teeth. The most distant parts of the fragments were 20 paces apart. Later, he added a 6th fragment, part of a lower jaw found in another part of the island, but in a stratum of the same geological age." Close quote. How scientific is it to collect scraps of bones 20 yards or so apart, add to them another scrap found miles away, and claim that they all belong together? Another example is given by evolutionist Le Gros Clark. Quote, "There is a danger of relying on too few measurements. An example of this difficulty is provided by the famous case of Hesperopithecus. This generic name was given to a fossil tooth found in Nebraska in 1922 on the assumption that it represented an extinct type of anthropoid ape. As is well known, the tooth proved later to be that of a fossil peccary, a pig-like animal. There can be few paleontologists who have not erred in this way at some time or another, close quote. Of another discovery, the Encyclopedia Britannica in its 1946 edition said, quote, the discovery which ranks next in importance was made by Mr. Charles Dawson at Piltdown, Sussex. Between the years 1911 and 1915, he found the greater part of the left half of a deeply mineralized human skull, also part of the right half of the lower jaw, damaged at certain parts, but carrying the first and second molar teeth and the socket of the third molar or wisdom tooth. Oops. Amongst British authorities, there is now agreement that the skull and the jaw are parts of the same individual. How long does it go on this? I'm just going to keep reading. Close quote. No doubt the reader familiar with evolutionary matters will recognize the above as the Piltdown Man. How scientific was this agreement among British authorities? Science Newsletter of February 25th, 1961 reminds us, quote, one of the most famous fakes exposed by scientific proof was Piltdown Man, found in Sussex, England, and thought by some to be 500,000 years old. After much controversy, it turned out to be not a primitive man at all, but a composite of a skull of modern man and the jawbone of an ape. The jawbone had been doctored with bichromate of potash and iron to make it look mineralized, close quote. In addition to staining the skull, the teeth had been filed down to make them appear worn. As the Reader's Digest of October 1956 wrote, quote, every important piece proved a forgery. Piltdown Man was a fraud from start to finish. All the circumstantial evidence points to Dawson as the author of the hoax. Okay, we're going to stop there. All right, so we'll stop there. We'll talk about that. All right, so our favorites, the arguments that will not die no matter how many times they have been run through. Piltdown Man and Nebraska Man. So let's discuss this. We actually did a whole video where we discussed in detail all the little facets about both of those stories. It's titled Evolutionary Frauds. We also discussed Archaeoraptor, because the difference between the so-called evolution frauds and creationist frauds is it's for the evolution frauds, quote, and we'll talk about why that's an incorrect thing to say in the first place, is paleontologists never made these to prove evolution, but creationists make fakes to prove creationism.
The motivation was always not, let's fake it to support Darwinism, basically, yeah.
And the fun part is, because I didn't know this, at least I haven't heard this claim before about Nebraska Man. That is the exact same claim that was also used against Lucy, because apparently the knee was found too far away, so it could never be her knee.
Right, and I'm not even sure what the origin of that claim was, because Lucy was found in one piece.
Yes.
Right, she was all found in one rock. Right. I don't know what the origin of the claim.
I
think we addressed that. I think we addressed that when we had Donald Johansson on, and I think what he said is that was entirely incorrect. There was another knee found, but there was never the claim, nor was it used to reconstruct Lucy's skeleton. I think that is, if I recall correctly, that's what he said.
It was just a separate find, and somebody got confused, thinking that they were still telling that, this is also her knee. No, it was never claimed to be her knee.
It was mentioned, if I'm correct, it was mentioned in a newspaper that they also found a knee several miles away from where Lucy was found. And that's where the creationists constructed the story and just ran with it, because they didn't even understand what it said in the article.
There's actually a very old YouTube video where you have Kent Hovind being publicly challenged by somebody who calls him out on this exact issue.
Yeah, and I'm sure he had a a PowerPoint slide that he could point to.
Yeah, he was frantically scrolling down his slides in response to that guy.
Yeah,
So
it was just a misunderstanding.
should
It wasn't.
should we have a moment of silence for Mr. Hovind, because I watched I
Did he
watched
die?
no not yet.
Because that would be celebration, not
No.
moment of silence, Peter.
No, so he did a Whack an Atheist on Atheist Junior yesterday, and in the middle of that he got either a mini stroke or a TIA
Oh,
while he was on
Tragic.
video, and his reading from that moment on is it's art. Let's say
as they said on Top Gear. Oh no. Anyway,
annual sex
so-
instead of anal sex, and you'll have to watch it.
yikes.
It's funnier if you go. It's funnier if you go to a channel called Mark Stoney Official and watch it there.
Mm.
Then
Yeah.
Hovind doesn't get the views.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway, back to Piltdown Man. So the thing about Piltdown Man is it is correct in saying that like the jaw was, I think it was an orangutan's jaw that had been like chemically worn, as it said, and filed down, all that sort of
Filed
stuff.
down, yes.
Yeah. And the skull, or the cranium part, was actually a human's. So, and the funny thing about this was it pretty much didn't fool very many people, because for one, this wasn't made by a paleoanthropologist. It was made by, this says Dawson, but also the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes has also been implicated in it.
Sure, Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah.
Right, that's right. And maybe it was him, who knows. Whoever made it, it was not made by a paleoanthropologist, and it was not made to advance evolution, and pretty much nobody outside of a few British paleoanthropologists took it seriously. Yeah. And part of the reason was it just didn't fit with what we knew about evolution of hominins at that time. Darwin,
it was even before it was exposed, it was pretty much not included in the set of like, oh, these are the fossils that we are really excited about. Like Piltdown Man was like basically tucked down into a drawer, almost forgotten basically by the time it was exposed.
Right, exactly. And yeah, certainly by like the 50s, it was just it was like a sore thumb. It didn't make any sense with the like the erectus and australopiths coming out of Africa and things, and it just didn't.
It's basically a piece of a puzzle that didn't belong to the whole puzzle. Basically, it was just like a foreign piece,
from a different puzzle.
Right, and so even within, if I remember correctly, even within 10 years, it was exposed by, I think, some French paleontologists who were like, "Whoa, this just doesn't make any sense at all." And then,
in all fairness, part of why there wasn't a lot to expose, because no one accepted it. The mainstream science just didn't accept it because it was
anomalous.
Yeah,
extremely anomalous.
Complete anomaly, which would be hard to explain. And everyone was skeptical about it, and so there wasn't a lot to debunk, because it's I always compared a little to God. People will ask me, well, can you prove that God doesn't exist? Well, I'll have to wait until you prove that he does. That's how this works.
Right.
I mean, it's that easy.
Yeah, but pretty much the only reason why Piltdown Man was accepted by some at all was more of national pride. Like, oh, the Germans had their Neanderthals, and France had their like impressive cave art, but there was little to no sign of any humans in England, basically. Until Piltdown Man, and they were like, yeah, humanity began in British, like we were all British apparently.
Right. And even with the one guy,
Nestle, currently there's a good case to be made whether or not there are modern humans in Britain now, but that's not.
Well, even
well.
the famous was it Cheddar Man? was like maybe there's some contamination as to who he's related to, because they did like a genetic sequence of the fossil, and they were like, oh, this is the closest relative of this dude who lives not too far away, and it was like it's a little convenient,
Yeah.
But I don't think that was taken. I don't think it's still considered super reliable, but so the fact of the matter is, it wasn't made by paleoanthropologists. Even this book points that out. It was not made to prove evolution, and it didn't really fool anybody outside of England. It fooled a few paleontologists in England. So no part of this is like a slam dunk against evolution.
The last important point is to point out that it wasn't exposed by creationists or even outside the scientific community. It was exposed by the scientific community. So that shows that science is self-correcting.
In all fairness, creationists haven't disproved anything yet.
That's true. Yeah, so every part of this just isn't a win for creationists. It's a win for this is how the scientific method exposes frauds. So this is it's a success story, really. And the same is true of Nebraska Man, or Hesperopithecus, as the generic name was. It was by Osborne, I think, was the one who gave it that name. But again, and even in the case with Hesperopithecus, it's even less like weird, right? It was just a tooth that was misidentified, and even Osborne himself.
Oh, you mean Nebraska Man or
Nebraska Man? Yeah, Hesperopithecus.
No, that's the same thing. Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, so even in that case, it was even less weird, right? Because he just misidentified a tooth, and the thing about that was, you're talking about a couple of teeth that are very worn down. And both primates and pigs are omnivores, so it's not super difficult to imagine that there would be some dental similarities there. And like I said, it's worn down and it's ancient. So, and even Osborne expressed to be skeptical of his find. He said, and I've read,
he was like, maybe this is a human tooth, or maybe, yeah.
Yeah, we read one of the papers in the Evolution of Frauds video. He's like, yeah, maybe, but reserve your judgment. And so again,
and then like a tabloid news articles like, oh, I smell a story here.
Yes, yeah, and their job, as we pointed out in a new video which is about to come out, is the job of the media is not to promote the truth. It's to get clicks or views. It's to get viewership. That's why there are so many tabloid newspapers, for goodness sakes. It's just about getting exposure. That's where your revenue comes from. Now, whether or not that's true,
and that's a nice segue. Speaking about exposure, we've got a very nasty Arab in the side chat saying we need subtitles to understand those Dutch. Yeah.
Oh, do we?
Mubarak, we will talk at some point. We will talk. That's my my co-host Mubarak trying to.
Oh, good. Well, hello, welcome.
To mess up the side chat.
Also one of the other things with that relates to this bit about the Nebraska Man was, and this is also something we will discuss in an upcoming video, is it's relatively easy to misidentify fossils. If you're dealing with a very small data set, and your data set or the samples you're looking at are like a couple centimeters long, it can be pretty easy to mess up. So one of the things we're going to talk about in the next video, just to give you a little taste, is a little fossil primate called Propodo. Now, Propodo was thought to be a fruit bat for a long time because it was only known from a couple of jaw fragments. And these jaw fragments look like those of pteropodid bats. So, based on that, it was assigned. Well, it was originally assigned as a lemur relative, which is why it's called Propodo. But then later it was assigned to bats, and it's not anymore. It's actually back to primates, interestingly enough. That's a whole story you'll have to learn about when our video gets released. And yes, Nestling is right. Like and subscribe, folks. All that jazz.
Mhm.
So Hesperopithecus was just an instance of the news media, not the scientists, running wild and drawing this whole picture of Nebraska Man, with like a bone in hand and all that sort of stuff. That was not science. That was a local newspaper that did that. So again, this is just science correcting itself.
Didn't Osborne also responded to that article? I think so, right?
Yes, I believe he chastised them for that
Yeah.
image. Yeah. But again, this is just science correcting itself. Like this is relatively mundane. The fact that fossil fragments get switched from one clade to another, that's relatively routine. That's nothing to jump up and down about. Anyway. I just kind of mentioned Piltdown Man again.
I'm testing the
What'd you say, Peter?
linguistics. I'm testing the linguistics of one of the people in the side chat. Let's see how far he gets. Oh, he's close to where I live. He's really close. But
Well, if you're in the Netherlands, you're always close to each other.
He's 10 minutes away from
Yeah.
me. About 10 minutes, I guess. 10, 15.
That's pretty funny.
That's pretty close.
So yeah. So Piltdown Man was not a fraud made by paleontologists, and Nebraska Man just wasn't a fraud at all. It was just a misidentification. So neither of these are knocks on evolution. Do you guys have anything you want to add before we move on to the next section? We'll just finish out the subchapter.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Quote, the extent to which some evolutionists have stooped to manufacture the facts that are so glaringly missing for their theory is also revealed in the January 1965 Scientific American. It tells of a meteorite that contained organic material and was used to support evolution. Quote, a fragment of a meteorite that fell in southwest France more than a century ago has proved on recent inspection to be ingeniously doctored with terrestrial organic material. The hoaxer had apparently moistened the meteorite fragment until it was soft, inserted the various foreign bodies, and then, using glue as a binder, faked a surface crust of the kind produced by atmospheric heating to replace the one destroyed by his manipulations. The Orgale, I'm not entirely sure, fall had occurred only 5 weeks after Pasteur had delivered his stormy and widely reported defense of divine creation as the only possible initiator of life. That's just a straight up lie. Anyway. Also deceptive is the way evolutionary matters are often presented to the unwary. Time and again, fossils are lined up to make the casual observer conclude that they came from one another. But on further investigation, it is found that this is not even generally accepted among evolutionists. Another example is the suggestion that man evolved from an ape. Although evolutionary theory no longer makes that claim but rejects it, we find such wording as the chapter heading in the 1965 book, The Primates, which says, from man toward ape. Truly, the fossil evidence and corresponding reconstructions presented for man's evolution is the shabbiest excuse for science. It is built on fantastic assertions and speculations, with the evolutionary chain shredded by gigantic gaps in time, place, and shape. The true scientific facts point not to the evolution of man from the beast, but to the creation of man as a kind separate and distinct from the animals. He remains as such to this day. He cannot cross with any of the animals, because his DNA does not allow for it. He remains within his Genesis kind, has always done so, and will always do so. Close quote. All right. So,
well, I will give him the point about the chain of the chain of process. So how do you call it again? The
the orthogenic sequence. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
I will give the point to him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So that was a problem, or that was called orthogenesis, which was this idea that you could just line up the fossils in a sequence, one to the other.
And that was mostly that was a second action idea that was mostly popular among the paleontologists, which is why the fossils were lined up very, very often.
Right, and you see like early pictures of the horse sequence like that,
right?
Or
exactly.
The Brontotheres, or things like that, where you have this nice little line from Hyracotherium on up to modern Equus, but that's not really how that happened.
Yeah.
In fact,
also the most famous evolutionary meme is the March of Progress, which
Right.
is like of course the author did not intend it to be that way, but unfortunately it's often interpreted that way. But yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, with some little chimp-like guy evolving up to modern humans. Yeah. Orthogenesis, although it had some other like weird sides to it too, but we talked about that a bit in our history of evolutionary theory with
Right.
Dan Stern Cardinal. So if you guys want to know about that, go check that video out. But yeah, generally the idea that and we've talked about this a lot before, trying to place any fossil taxon as directly ancestral to another is nearly impossible. There are very few like super recent examples in which we can say with a reasonable degree of assuredness that one is ancestral to the other. Like Homo erectus is directly ancestral, to Homo sapiens, and Australopithecus is directly ancestral to Homo. But you can't do that for a lot of things because the fossil record is so incomplete. The very best you can say in most cases is they're cousins. They shared a common ancestor.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically a numbers game. Like you have more cousins than you have direct ancestors. So unless you have any more information, the safe assumption is they are cousins.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I guess we'll get to the meteorite thing last. So the other thing you said was
there is also like one thing, like you said, the recent examples. I think there was also another example where like you have a very high resolution fossil record, like I think the diatoms maybe you can see a speciation splitting event in there. Yes.
Right. Yeah. For very tiny like phytoplankton, those guys. In some cases, you can get like this species, is directly below this other one, and you can see like the very slight changes from one to the other. But again, those are
I saw a graph. I saw a graph like on one axis you have time, and another axis you have size, and you see like there is one size of diatom, and then it splits in two. Like you have a bigger one and a smaller one, basically.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we've talked about that in the evolution series we did with Dapper. We talked about that. I mean, we've talked about other places, but yeah, you have to have really, really good fossil records. That.
Yes.
What was the other thing he said? Oh, he cannot cross with any of his animals because his DNA does not allow for it. So back in the 60s,
what does that even mean, actually?
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe they're trying to say like we're too distantly related, but so the funny thing is there's kind of a checkered history of like the human chimp hybrids. I think it was only attempted a couple of times, but we don't really need to do that anyways, I don't think. Certainly I don't think we should volunteer anyone for the process. But at the same time this book was written, there was a developing field or systematics was starting to develop using molecular methods. And one of the earliest molecular methods was called DNA hybridization.
Right.
So basically you anneal these two these strands of DNA, and the higher the temperatures required to separate them, the more closely related they are, the better the strands fit together. So what it turned out is you can actually hybridize human DNA with chimps and gorillas.
To be clarify, it's not hybridized, not the organism themselves, but just DNA, just the DNA.
We're not using ape sperm and egg cells in this. We're just using the DNA, and then you're separating the DNA based on temperature.
We do have one example. The famous scientist Bill Maher did an entire series about that. That there seems to be a human orangutan hybrid.
Bill Maher?
Yes. And he
Bill Maher said there's a human orangutan hybrid. What is that?
Yeah.
I never. You mean the comedian, right? So like with the.
Yes. Yeah,
I never heard of that.
Yes, he proposed that.
I now I know.
Yeah, some birther was harassing Obama, and so that was his response. He did that for an entire series that he had
Jackson,
suspicions.
are you catching on? Are you catching
Are you
on?
talking about Donald Trump?
Yes,
Yes.
that Trump's mother had an outside relationship on a vacation, and so this would also explain the color of Trump's hair.
I too go to Borneo on vacation.
I mean, if you followed all of that, that was pretty hilarious because at some point
my God.
Trump threatened to sue him, which never happened, which makes you think, right? Because he'll sue anyone. Would he have thought that he would have lost? We don't know. We'll never know, probably.
It was, you know, I don't know if jokes on like a comedian show count as libel, or I guess that would be slander technically. But
Perhaps one of them would have called Saul for as his attorney.
I think Bill Maher covered that because he had checked that, and comedy doesn't qualify as slander or libel, so Trump would have had no case because it's a comedy show. What are you gonna do? Sue all comedians because every once in a while someone gets insulted? So that's what comedy's about. 9 out of 10 times it's the comedian itself. So, but
right.
it was really funny to watch the whole thing unfold over all of those shows. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The other thing about this was well, first I want to address Louis Pasteur delivered a stormy and widely reported defense of divine creation as the only possible initiator of life. Actually, that conflicts with of what I understand of Louis Pasteur. In fact, Pasteur, from what I remember, argued specifically against that. He said, "Don't place your faith on science." He said, "Don't rest your faith on particular scientific conclusions, because if those conclusions change, then that means your faith has to change."
Yes.
Which I have to agree with that. But I believe that was him. So I'm pretty sure he did not argue that divine creation was the only initiator of life specifically because of that. The other thing was so this is kind of funny because I've never heard of this, but also we have more recent meteorites that have fallen to Earth and contained various organic compounds like the Murchison meteorite and lots of other ones. We know that organic molecules are just like on other planets. They're in nebula. They're all over the place. It's really not that hard to make organic molecules. So the Enceladus, one of the moons of, is it Jupiter or Saturn? I can't ever remember which one. But it has like a methane sea, doesn't it? It's like that's all.
That was
organic.
Yeah, I forgot about that. There was so I watch QI back in the day. That was hosted by Stephen Fry, and I always forget the name of the British comedian. And he had Brian Cox on, and Brian Cox was talking about this moon, and that it had an ocean of methane. Yeah, and he. I don't know how they got there, but he said that there was a moon where he could go to and then throw Ewoks in a lake of frozen methane, frozen farts. That's how he called it. It's a nice bit. You have to look it up. It's the clip somewhere online, and Brian Cox just ran with it and made it worse and worse and worse. So it was a recurring thing through the entire show, which is why I like Brian Cox, because didn't miss a beat. If someone would say that to me, I can throw an Ewok in a lake of frozen farts. I would have to think first. Brian Cox just ran with it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there are organic molecules all throughout the universe. So the idea that like the idea that
There's
divine
prob-
creation was necessary to start life is kind of ridiculous. Also, fun fact: if you guys are aware of a channel called Inspiring Philosophy, who is a Christian and not he does like biblical history and all that sort of stuff, but he is of the opinion that like abiogenesis is actually really easy. We did a video in conjunction with him titled "Misunderstanding Abiogenesis," where we both go after this weird group of fundamentalist Christians. But he might be right. It might be a lot easier than we thought for abiogenesis to occur.
Yeah, but recently I've been reading like books on Genesis, and I've also like a new Nick Lane book, Transformers. It's also
That's
pretty
right.
interesting.
Yeah. How is that? Is that good?
I think I read it I was on vacation lately, and I read the entire book in like 2 weeks, and that was really good. Yes.
Awesome. Well, good.
Yeah. Although I am a bit like there's a chapter focused on consciousness, and I'm a bit skeptical about that, but it sounds pretty interesting too.
What was his take on it?
Yeah, it's a. I don't. Do you want to spoil, or maybe I don't know?
Yeah, shoot it. Go ahead.
Oh, it's basically like how consciousness works is still a mystery, and he also relates that to how general anesthetics work. Like we also don't know how general anesthetics work, but it seems to be that general anesthetics. The only commonality that they have, like even a xenon gas can be used as an anesthetic, even though it's inert gas. But the only way it affects us, it messes up with the electron transport chain, with our metabolism, basically. And what Nick Lane is concluding from it is that our metabolism is basically the core of consciousness.
Okay, well that's interesting at least.
Yeah.
That's certainly interesting at least. I mean, I've been one of the books I've been reading is The Big Picture by Nick Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Lane, good.
Oh, no,
it's by Sean Carroll.
Sean Carroll, yes.
I was thinking of the book you said. Yeah, it's by Sean Carroll, who is a theoretical physicist, and it's really interesting because he talks a lot about. It's mostly about like physics, how the universe works, how forces work, but he uses our understanding of physics, which is pretty darn good at this point. Like the way that forces work on our level of reality, like for our everyday purposes, is pretty well known. We can do lots of experiments which test, the four fundamental forces and how they interact. Well, because we have such a good understanding of these forces, that necessarily limits what is possible. So, for one thing, telekinesis really just can't exist at our level of reality. And the reason is there are no forces that work over that distance, right? Like gravity. Gravity does not work over the distance required for telekinesis to exist. Nor do the strong and weak nuclear forces, and electromagnetic force just simply doesn't work in a way that would make telekinesis possible.
Yesterday I spoke with someone who thinks that is actually possible.
Well, because they also believed a lot of other things, apparently, Peter. So not sure if I hold their opinion in high regard.
No, I asked her to hand me my coffee, but she just did it by hand, and I thought that was silly.
Like there was a funny quote that Nick Lane included in that chapter from Luca Turing, which says the only thing we know about consciousness is that it is soluble in chloroform. So
oh boy.
Yeah, that's how he got to into the general anesthetics and the connection between that and metabolism and consciousness. I think it's still interesting, but I'm skeptical about that.
I mean, it's a physical. It's almost certainly a variety of physical processes, right? And that was the other thing that Carol pointed out was there also can't really be a soul given what we know about the physical forces. There's no way there would have to be a new set of forces proposed by soul proponents to explain how the soul pushes electrons around or causes neurons to work or moves mitochondria or
While not being
vesicles at synapses.
while not being part of the body.
Right,
On Raw did a debate with Eric Hernandez, and Eric Hernandez was really annoyed that Arn kept bringing up Carol, and he said, "And what do you do if your computer breaks down? Do you go to a car mechanic?" And Arn did try to explain this to him, but Arn had lost most of the conversation with Carol and couldn't exactly remember what he had said about this. So that was a little bit of a downer. But yeah, if the soul is not part of the human body, then how does it interact with the brain, and how does it direct neurons, and how do things get copied
right.
from the brain, from the mind, which we know is physical, to the soul? And his
Right.
his explanation was, if I break open a CD, can I see the tone C? Can I hear it? Can I get it out of the CD? And Arn tried to explain that it is converted into data, and if you play the data with the appropriate apparatus, then that will produce that sound.
Right.
And they never got anywhere.
But it's all physical processes.
Yes.
It's all physical processes, though. Every step of it, right? It's involving particles at every point, right?
Yes.
You know, there's no point where it's like there's the essence of the music in the CD. Like, no. The CD has, you know, is made in a particular way that when you put it into a computer, it will generate a certain response in the computer, which is all made of particles.
It's coded, and the way it is coded is there's a reflecting layer in a CD, and that is there's a laser bounced off of that, and the code will then be converted into an electromagnetic signal, which is then decoded and converted in another electromagnetic signal that is sent to the loudspeakers, which converts it by movement into sound. Every step of the way is literally physical.
Right, exactly. You're using photons, or you're using, you know, the atoms of the computer, or the CD or electrons. It's always physical. There's a physical part to every step of it, and consciousness really has to be that way, even if we don't understand quite exactly what, you know, where or how it's being generated, and it's probably being generated from a variety of sources all acting together, which is why it's so hard to figure it out.
I think there's also a question of, like, at what level does the process really happen? Like, there are some guys who think, like, consciousness is a quantum phenomena or something, like, or the highest level is more like neuron interactions, I think. So yeah, it's,
Can I highlight?
Right, exactly.
Can I highlight a comment, because I actually think that is pretty funny. Smitty said, basically the lyrics and the sheet music are written on a disc. Tiny demons in your computers can read the invisible writing and play the music live for you. I think that's how that works, Smitty. I think, I think you got it.
I appreciate that.
I think you got it.
I do like that, but yeah. So and also we do know that, like, for instance, you can't form memories if your neurons can't shuffle proteins and RNA around, and we know this because we've done this with mice and other laboratory animals. If you remove the ability of their brains to shuffle around these proteins from neuron to neuron, then they can't form long-term memories. It's like they have short-term memory loss.
There's actually also a guy who had, like, severe epilepsy, and as he went under surgery, remove all his. I think what was the hippocampus? I think or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Like like a part of the brain at least. I don't know. I don't remember which part, but they removed it. And now after the surgery, he cannot remember anything for more than 7 minutes or so.
Oof.
Like he lived for years thinking he was still 27 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's pretty rough. But yeah, I mean
and it's also another funny phenomenon. Like he because he can't remember, he can't form new memories. He also doesn't really think about the future either.
Okay, that is interesting.
Like when you asked him, like, oh, what do you think you will do tomorrow? I don't know, like something like that. Like he cannot really put words to it, like what he wants to do tomorrow or in a year or something like that. Like,
that's very interesting.
It's still pretty tragic, but yeah, it's such unfortunate cases. We learn a lot about how the brain works.
Yeah, and you know, as sort of it's like a one more thing on this. I it's kind of why I always sort of roll my eyes when I see like theologians talking about what they think consciousness is and how it interacts with the soul, because let's be real, there's a reason they're theologians and not scientists. They're not putting forth testable hypotheses in the literature. You know, they're not saying, hey, this is my model, this is what I'm proposing, here's how we can test it. They're saying, well, it's the soul, and obviously, and I'm just going to ignore all the neuroscience data. Like, come on, if you had an idea that you thought was worth defending and that you could test, you'd be a scientist. You wouldn't be a theologian. And it's silly. Because they basically would have to come up with a new set of forces, a new set of physical forces that no one has ever seen before. They've never been implicated in any experiments ever. We've never seen them before. And they just happen in our brain, I guess, somewhere, somehow.
Jackson, you go the hard way. It can be done so much easier. I mean, haven't you seen the shows that the famous doctor Carl Baugh did on YouTube? I mean, all you need to do
How
is
could I forget?
You throw on a lab coat and you're a scientist.
I mean, that's basically how that works. Yeah.
I was actually talking to the guy and hoping to get him on my channel just when he passed away. But this was a thing John Pendleton did. Throw on a lab coat. That's it.
Yes. Also, Beej Price is here. Hello.
Hey, Beej.
Hello, Beej. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on theologians. There you go. So Neslick said Henry Gustav Molaison was the patient, and the surgery removed all of his hippocampus and amygdala. No long-term memory, also no sense of fear. Very interesting.
And one more thing. Thoughts on theologians won't work, Jackson. You have to have the full set, thoughts and prayers.
Right, of course. How could I forget? All right, we ready to move on to vestigial organs?
Let's do it.
And I'm just going to read through the rest of this chapter, and then we'll call it. Or then we'll do it.
Okay.
Vestigial organs. Quote, evolutionists point to what they call vestigial organs in man as constituting proof for human evolution. These are said to be the last vestiges of organs that once had a use but are now no longer needed because of the advance up the evolutionary ladder. But note what an article in the November 1966 Reader's Digest entitled "The Useless Gland That Guards Our Health" states, quote, for at least 2,000 years, doctors have puzzled over the function of a pinkish gray bit of tissue lying just below the neck and behind the breastbone, the thymus gland. Modern physicians came to regard it, like the appendix, as a useless vestigial organ which had lost its original purpose, if indeed it ever had one. In the last few years, however, the dogged detective work of a small band of Americans, Britons, Australians, and Swedes has cracked the thymus enigma. These men have proved that far from being useless, the thymus is really the master gland that regulates the intricate immunity system and protects us against infectious diseases. But is the thymus gland the only organ regulating our immunity system? Recent experiments have led researchers to believe that the appendix, tonsils, and adenoids may also figure in the antibody responses, close quote. The Encyclopedia Britannica also said in this regard, quote, many of these so-called vestigial organs are now known to fulfill important functions, close quote. The ignorance of the function of a particular organ is no reason to call it vestigial, nor is its malfunctioning proof that it is vestigial. There are probably more cases of throat ailments each year than there are of appendicitis, but no one would call the throat a vestigial organ. Besides, evolution must show the evolving of new organs, more useful ones. Any organ that is indeed degenerating is hardly proof for evolution, but is rather support for the degeneracy of man, a downward movement instead of an upward one, close quote. Okay, all right. So, first and foremost, vestigial does not mean useless. Vestigial does not mean useless. Plaster it on your forehead because it does not mean useless. It has never meant useless. Darwin did not think it meant useless. So, when creationists say vestigial means useless, they are wrong. Now, in fairness to creationists, I've seen some scientists use vestigial to mean useless. So, it happens. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. Now, technically, there are organs which, even by that definition, are vestigial by that definition, I should say. There are things which are truly useless. But vestigial does not in and of itself mean useless. It means it has changed in function from having a prior function. Now, maybe
I would say it has lost at least one or most of its previous function.
Sure.
It may have retained or gained a new function.
Right, exactly. So I think it's funny the thymus. I mean, this was way before our time, but a better example is, or a more recent example is the appendix. So the appendix, which is attached to your large intestine, is a remnant of the cecoappendicular complex, which is in lots of other mammals. It's often much longer because it acts in fermentation for plants. That's typically what it does. In primates, interestingly, the cecoappendicular complex has actually gotten a lot smaller. And Darwin figured that was due to our diet, and indeed our diet has changed. Because for a lot of herbivores, you have to have very long digestive tracts because it takes a long time to convert or to break down cellulose. Because cellulose is a tough sugar, which is in the cell walls of plants. So, but the appendix, even though it has a function, it acts as sort of a well, in a sense, for beneficial bacteria to sort of reseed our intestines. Should you have like very bad diarrhea or something like that, like giardia, which causes diarrhea. So if you have something like that and you totally wipe out your gut flora, this can refill your gut flora. Now, some of us, cough myself, no longer have an appendix because it tried to kill me. So I had to get rid of it.
It sometimes happens.
Bad appendix. Bad appendix.
Bad appendix, right?
Bad.
Yeah, like what, 3 years ago now, I think. I like woke up from a nap middle of the day and I was like, wow, my side hurts. Well, I did nothing about that until the next day when my side was still hurting. And I texted my mom and I was like, hey, my right lower quadrant hurts. To which she said, go to our quick care, one of like the little like makeshift hospital areas, that where people can visit without going to an actual hospital.
That is so American. Makeshift hospital places.
Well, look, it's cheaper to go there than to an actual hospital.
You have two Dutch people. You have two Dutch people in here. We just go to the hospital.
Yeah, well, this is America. You can't just do that, Peter. Anyways, the point is, well, I basically just went there and told them what was wrong, and they said, "Okay, so you're going to go to the hospital." They're like, "We're not going to charge you because you're just leaving right now. Go away."
Mhm.
And so I did. So I went and I got it removed later that night, and then basically stayed till like noon the next day. So fun times. Yours erupt. Sage Ohio says mine erupted at a concert. That is very unfortunate. Mine hadn't yet erupted. It was starting to swell, but it had not erupted yet. So I was very fortunate in that regard. Funny enough, there's the kid. What was his name? One of the kids who went to heaven. Who like claimed to have gone to heaven.
The kid who wrote the book?
Yeah, one of them like had appendicitis and it burst, and then he like lived or whatever, and said I went to heaven and saw God or whatever.
And then later went on TV and said, "My mom and dad made me do it."
Yeah, because his dad was a pastor at like the local church or whatever. So
yeah,
how embarrassing. But anyways,
I mean, how proud do you have to be as a pastor that you raised a son who made it to heaven and back to tell people about it? How convenient.
Right? I mean, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's great. It's really convenient when that happens to your
yes,
your closest kid in your life,
Yeah.
It's also interesting that the place you go to is always heaven, or the place depends on where you live.
Right. He didn't go up there and was like, "What's with all these women?"
Yeah, and you can do it in a different way as well. I mean, Jesus said, if you do not hate your brother and your sister and your father and your mother and your wife and your children, I mean, Kent Hovind has it down pretty much at the moment. He's just adding wives and children to it, but he'll get there. I mean,
yikes. I thought it would be really funny though if that kid like came back and he's like, there were all these women and young guys who play like video games or something.
And these women
are my 72 virgins.
No. Yeah, these women were all naked and wanted to play with me. And that shh.
Yeah. That would be, or he met like Vishnu or or Krishna or something like that. He's like, why does God have an elephant head?
Oh, that reminds me of a very sad tweet that I retweeted earlier today. The guy
would it be fun? Yeah.
The guy shared a video of a baby elephant swinging his trunk so in circles. And he said, "Yeah, see, it's okay if a baby elephant does that. If I do it, I get banned from IKEA."
Oh, we are so demonetized.
Yeah, I mean,
like wouldn't it be funny like if you like the one like the child who with the parents, right, who got near that experience? Would it be funny if like a child came back and said like, does God have a hammer? And do they call the place Valhalla, or I just thought that was called heaven. And the parents were like,
yeah, I think Jackson like I think Jackson went there with his 72 virgins that were waiting for the kid.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there was this really big hall and they were like all eating food at this long table. Like, what's up with that? Anyway, I thought it was very funny that he compared. He said there are more instances of throat problems than appendicitis, but nobody calls the throat a vestigial organ. Now I wonder. Now I'm just spitballing here, but I wonder: is it possibly because there are more moving parts in the throat, thus leaving it potentially more susceptible to infections? Also, it's like it is interfaced or not quite, but it's pretty close to the interface with the outside world.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty open to getting the infections in the first place.
Right, exactly. It's like this is such a bizarre argument. Yes, people cut their skin, on their hands more than they have appendicitis. Therefore, the skin is vestigial. Like, that's like the picture. It's like the airplane with all the spots on it. That's what this. It's like I don't think you're kind of missing the point here.
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, so also, and of course they did the, even if it's losing function, that's degeneration, not evolution.
Yeah, and
because
it isn't, because it sometimes will adopt new functions. So how does that work for the creationist?
And my favorite example of a vestigial that is still very functional is the penguin wing, basically, because it lost the function for flight, but it's still a wing. It's still a wing, but it's used for something else, for swimming now.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's flying through the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So it is vestigial, but it's also very functional, and the appendix is also functional, right, and vestigial, even though it kills people. Just sometimes it explodes and kills you, but whatever, it's fine, it's all good. So I think it's really funny that they're like, yeah, well, even if you prove that it's that evolution happens, it's not really evolution. It's kind of that mentality. So it's like you can't ever win.
No.
It's like with the
they have goalposts on wheels, Jackson.
They have goalposts with rocket jetpacks.
Yes,
Peter. That's what they have.
Yeah, probably.
Because, what was the thing? Ray Comfort asked, P.Z. Myers in that the Evolution versus God. Can you give me an observed example of evolution? Well, sure. And then PZ goes, into this whole example, and then Ray's like, oh, but they're still just
experiment and such. They are still bacteria.
Right, they're still bacteria. They're still just fish. They're still whatever. Insert the thing. It's like, well, of course it is. That's what we expect. It's to win, you have to defeat evolution.
Yeah.
So,
and there's also the thing like I think P.J. Myers also got him to go on like, but humans are still fish, and then Ray Comfort was like, you don't suggest that humans are still fish, right? But yeah, we are. And that,
right.
But this is a whole different thing. Even some evolutionists also still have a problem with that cladistic logic.
I'm going to.
They're still resistant to that.
I'm going to disrupt the entire conversation again. I'm going to disrupt the entire conversation again. So P.V. Myers had
either
this,
everything is a
had
fish or nothing's a fish.
This whole conversation with Ray Comfort, and years and years and years later, Jackson made a picture.
What?
Huh?
Banana Man.
I made a picture.
But...
oh, Peter, do you want to post? Can you show that picture?
I probably could. Hold on.
So I was driving to work the other day, and no joke, as I'm like seconds from pulling into work, a yellow pickup truck is in front of me, and it has on the back window Banana Man. To which, for a moment, I was extremely excited, but I was like, I'm not going to pursue this person downtown. I think Peter might be about to show it, but Peter asked me, did I see the driver? I did not see the driver, unfortunately. But yeah, Banana Man, I was like, holy crap.
Yep. Drives
if that was Ray, I would have been very sad to miss him.
Yeah, if that was Ray, I'm a Ford fan, but if Comfort drives a Ford, I'm going to sell him.
I think that's actually something he would do. I would think, right? Like just own it, own the brand he was given.
Well, he did. He made that video, the Fool. That what did Jake call it? Like it was an extended religious brochure or something like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that what he called it? Because it took him so long to finally get that, like, bananas were made by people. They are literally intelligently designed by us.
And
they are not an
in
argument for
line
evolution.
and in line with creationist dishonesty, he said it was a joke from the start. No, it wasn't. Because, Ray Comfort, there are still talks of you online where you visited churches and told that whole story as if it was actually a fact and as if it was actually proof of God. It wasn't a joke. It never was a joke. It became a joke because people told you that you were the joke. I mean, even Kirk Cameron couldn't keep a straight face when he did that on camera and hadn't told Kirk Cameron what he was going to do. And that video is out there as well. You see him.
Yes.
What the hell are you talking about? I mean,
yeah, like, we've all seen that video.
We have video.
We've all seen it.
Yes. I mean, there's video. So, no, that wasn't a joke. You were 100% serious when you said that. And, this is what I don't get. Because I think creationists all have amnesia, because they will forget all of that in a heartbeat, and no one will talk about that anymore. No one's going to think.
Perhaps the hippocampus was removed too.
Yes, maybe they have a soul, and the soul is disrupting the whole physics within the brain, whereas everything gets distorted. I don't know.
I think it is interesting. I mean, you're right, Peter. You're right, and they do that sort of thing. You see it in the creationist literature too, where they will argue something for years and years and years, and then they will stop arguing it because they've probably realized it's like impossible to defend that position anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Then they make a new argument and they pretend they never argued the old one previously.
Yes,
like they just ignore it. It just never happened.
And sometimes even the exact opposite.
Yes. Like with like creationists used to be anti-speciation and natural selection. They used to argue both of those just didn't happen. And then it got to the point where we had witnessed both natural selection and speciation in the lab and in the field so many times it was just impossible. I mean, it was already
no, it's all about kinds.
They're not
kinds. Yeah. It's experiments.
Right. Exactly. Now it's super hyper mega charged evolution at the family level, whatever that means.
Like supercharged evolution within kinds, okay, but slow evolution over millions of years, no, impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Except according to them, 4,500 years ago there was a really big flood, and 14,000 was 14,000 or 1,400, Jackson, on the Ark. I think
14,000.
Yeah, 14. So
capacity,
yeah, and those all developed to become the millions of species we see today in only 4,500 years.
I mean, without
evolution.
Well, the thing is, the fewer kinds were on the Ark, the more species you have to produce per day, basically.
Yes.
But the reverse problem is, the more species you have on the Ark, the more difficult it is to maintain the Ark.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a cost 20, or it's a what's the term for it? It's a catch-22. There we go. It's catch-22. So either you have fewer species on.
Yeah, Arn put out a video yesterday, I think it was, about the flood, where he actually shows you a boat and how it is prepared. Because it's pretty much the only large animal carrier that we have. It doesn't even come close to, I think, to the Ark. I'm not even sure when it comes to capacity. And when you see what is involved, so the air circulation and air cleaning systems that need to be in place in order to have all those animals on board.
Yeah.
That's pretty intricate. I don't know how Noah did that, but it's not what Ken Ham said. The water
Yeah.
thing in the middle of the boat. I forgot what it's called, but
Even
the
even the
moon pool,
agriculture,
yeah.
even the agriculture with modern technology, with modern ventilation system,
mm-hmm,
all they have is stuffed animals.
mm-hmm.
Right.
That's all they can
Well,
have.
there's a reason
or
for
maybe a small
there's a reason for that.
children zoo or something.
No,
Yeah.
there's a reason for that because Ken Ham wanted to have real animals in the ark, but he wasn't allowed
Mhm.
because it would
He
have
wasn't
been
allowed.
it wouldn't have been feasible. Yes, you can't have
Yeah.
animals in that
animal
ark. You
abuse.
can. How would you do that
It
with
would
the
be
animal?
cruelty.
Yeah. Not only that,
Yeah.
but the amount of methane produced inside the ark, you'd have to have a pretty good ventilation system. I mean,
Yeah.
probably Jesus could have made it, but
It would have been animal abuse, and it would also be unbearable for visitors because they would be suffocating in stank.
I think they have one deck where they have recurring animals, so goats one day and then sheep the other day and then a few cows the day after that. But it's only a tiny little pen in on one of the decks where they have live animals, and which is probably why he created the zoo outside.
Yeah.
And even that, I think, is animal cruelty. If you look at how these animals are housed on these small patches of land, and yes.
Yeah.
Jackson, you know, like when Ken Ham debated Bill Nye, and it was supposed to be like before Bill Nye chimed in. It was supposed to be Aaron Ra, but Ken Ham refused to debate him, and so he debated Bill Nye. But then it was the funniest shit that I've ever seen, or one of the funniest shit I've ever seen. It was like you see Bill Nye walking around with Ken Ham to the ark, and at some point Aaron Ra just walks beside him, and Ken Ham does not notice him until one moment, and you see the shock on his face when he noticed Aaron Ra.
Yeah.
the sheer terror in his eye.
I mean, Aaron is tall and foreboding, so I can't exactly blame him, you know. But,
yeah, but
I know Aaron's a nice guy, but
I think Ken Ham would have known him, and he would have known the Aaron Ra from the debates, the guy who can get pretty heated, and if you have seen that, and then you see him in real life, it's going to be a shock. If you actually talk to him in real life, he wouldn't have scared you. But also, can I take a moment?
Nice guy, so.
Can I take a moment to warn Blokkadeleider in the chat? He said I saw some ARC promoting nonsense. Remember that we still have in the Netherlands an ARC, and the guy is still looking for a boat to have it transported to South America because it isn't seaworthy, and it made it to the UK, where it caused a lot of damage in some harbor after damaging a lot here when it got loose during a storm. Yeah, we Dutch need to do better too. We have an actual.
Well, I mean, you know.
So our arc is as honest as Ken Ham's, because this one is made on a barge. It can actually float.
Mm-hmm.
It's a steel barge, and then a wooden ark made on top of that. Pretty much how Noah would have done it.
Exactly. So anyway, so that's actually the end of our ape-like men, our ancestors. So chapter 8. And it was terrible. It was a terrible chapter. We Nestle, I don't know if you watched last week's episode, but we had in the chat. Where is this person? Oh, Jamie E, who found for us a quotation that had been mined. You know, because surprise, creationist quote mining. Who knew? Who would have guessed? And it was about Paranthropus. So they were trying to portray it as Australopiths were not our ancestors, according to this quote. But Jamie E found it and actually was saying Paranthropus was not our ancestor, which we kind of figured was the case. And then it was very satisfying to see that that was in fact the case, that they just lied about a quote, because that's what creationists do. They just lie.
Mm-hmm.
So now we go on to chapter 9. We'll start this. We have like 40 minutes left. So chapter 9, how old is man?
I shall not
All right,
answer.
so this is going to be some of it older than others sometimes.
Yeah. Some are older
this
than
chapter
others.
is going to be about radiometric dating, and we just had a radiometric dating expert on. Just actually, that was last week.
That was last week.
It wasn't last week that we.
No.
Yeah, this was last week. Yeah.
No, last week we had a really, really fun show.
Yes, we did. That was
if people haven't checked it out,
Age of Rocks.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked it out, go do that. Age of Rocks is a geochemist who works with like quaternary paleo caves. It was a really fun talk. So yeah, definitely check that out. We discussed how we have we have these modern methods for dating objects. It's not just we just have to assume that the decay rate was stable this whole time and that the ratio of parent to daughter isotopes was stable the whole time. We don't have to do that. That's just not a thing anymore, right? Like, all right. There's a bot in the chat. Can someone get rid of that?
On it.
All right. Quote: a fundamental part of the evolution theory is that life evolves slowly over hundreds of millions of years. Does this not disprove the Bible's teaching that man has been on Earth only about 6,000 years and that the Earth and all life upon it were created within 6 days? The Bible gives no specific time period to the actual creating of the Earth. Of the material universe, including the Earth, the simple Bible statement is, quote, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. This allows for thousands of millions of years that the material of the earth could have been in existence before being inhabited by living beings. After this, the Bible tells of 6 living things. Sorry, not beings. I'm an idiot. After this, the Bible tells of 6 days during which life appeared, but the Bible's use of the word day here means a period of time and not a 24-hour day. Ooh. Very interesting.
Ooh.
Very interesting.
That's going to get me in trouble with certain people.
Genesis 2:4 indicates this by speaking of the day that Jehovah God made heaven and earth, when previously it called each one of 6 periods included in that same time a day. Because of the way it is used in the Bible, the word day often means simply a period of time and cannot be confined to meaning just 24 hours. This can be verified by checking the word in an exhaustive Bible concordance and noting its many usages. Okay, well, I'll finish that one. But what about the great time difference between the Bible's nearly 6,000 years for man's existence and the millions of years claimed for it by evolutionists? Let us examine the dating methods evolutionists use and see how accurate they are. Close quote. Okay, first of all, it takes an oddly liberal theology with the chronology. I really did not expect that, if I'm honest.
No.
I did not expect it to say actually day just means age. It doesn't mean a single day, which I'm not disagreeing. And in fact,
this part alone may be why creationists are not referencing this book.
Oh, maybe.
Because that is heresy.
There's a video by Inspiring Philosophy, which is about Genesis 1:1, and it talks about, or Genesis 1, I guess, talks about how God created the earth on each day. Well, and I watched this video because I asked him, what is or do you have a video that you would show creationists if they said, the Bible argues for like 6 24-hour days? And this is the video he made, because he's not a creationist, of course. And so the video that he made is about what the Genesis account actually is. or Genesis 1 account. So the Genesis 1 account is not a creation account. This is kind of a mistranslation of what the Hebrew is, apparently. The Genesis 1 account is a story of assigning functions to things. God did not create ex nihilo the animals, the land animals and the water animals and the stars and the earth, because remember, it says, and they just say it here, or did they say it here? No, they didn't. But remember, God hovers over the earth and it's formless and void, right?
Yes.
So the earth was already there.
Mm-hmm.
And so what God did was assign functions to, and he does it in a way that it's a parallel manner. That's why it's poetry, basically. You have days like 1, 2, 3, and they have one set of functions, and this also is paralleled in days 4, 5, and 6. And so that's about assigning functions, because there's also later in the Bible, and I don't remember where exactly it was, the reverse happens, where God destroys this kingdom and just rips it into complete disarray. And it's like the opposite process. He makes it this like crazy wilderness. So it's not about, yes, in the beginning, God created is actually something of a mistranslation, is what Jamie E says. A more accurate rendering would be when God began to create. As Jackson's saying, it's not an absolute beginning of the universe. Exactly right, Jamie E. It's not about creation ex nihilo, as creationists like to claim. It is about assigning function to things that already existed. Animals, stars, all that. It all already existed. Now, does that mean the Earth wasn't a pancake with a dome over it? No, it was. That's what they thought. They did think that the stars were in the firmament, and God stretched out the firmament and all that sort of stuff. They did think that
if you Google traditional Hebrew cosmology, you will see like the model of that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. They really did think that like the Earth was like a snow globe in an infinite ocean. So, and that's wrong. But they did not actually believe that it was a matter of ex nihilo creation. So, yeah, absolutely. Anything you guys want to add to that before we move on to the next section?
I do have one thing. No. I was on a Christian channel a couple of days ago with a good friend from Australia, Mark Reed. And that's where we also bumped into a few flat earthers. And one of them mentioned the Selenian eclipse. So I made a schematic of the Selenian eclipse on a flat earth with both the sun and the moon outside of the dome. And I asked them to make me a drawing on how this eclipse could happen when both the sun and the moon are within the dome. I have found that that's an argument that will shut them up immediately. Because they refused to do it. And it was their idea that it was impossible. Then Mark and I started explaining how this works with the atmosphere and light refraction, and that the sun and the moon aren't actually above the horizon, but because of the refraction of the atmosphere, they're below the horizon. And then one of the flat earthers pulled up a picture showing how this happened, saying on the bottom of the meme, Flat Earth Debunk, and then the name of the website. And
oh dear.
I told him that is how it actually works. Now draw me this picture. And I kept telling him to draw me the picture. And eventually I was kicked from the room. Because you can't ask creationists to back up his claim, apparently. Doesn't work.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But it was funny.
Flat Earth is just dumb. Like with creationism, I think it intellectually they're kind of on the same level, but at least there's more to creationism than with flat Earth. Like you just have to not understand trig to be a flat earther. It doesn't get any lower than that. I mean, come on.
But I mean, in all honesty, to me it's the same thing. And it's
Yeah.
probably I'm going to insult a lot of people when I say this, but to me it is the same thing. There are so many things that have already been disproven. Everyone can look it up, and you keep sticking to your own story. That puts you on par with the flat earther who also refuses to look at the science and just wants to make claims.
Well, in the scientific community, they are considered on equal footing.
Dapper, I don't know exactly what he specifically said, but he says something like the only difference between creationism and flat Earth is they're just as wrong, but the only difference is how many books you would read to know which one is wrong.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, in terms of the scientific community, both are treated with the same level of contempt, which they deserve, because they're both nonsense. They both have no evidence backing them up whatsoever, and they both, or proponents of both, will just lie straight up to defend their beliefs. And when you get to that point, it's just over. You have nothing to offer. You're just done.
And I think the biggest proponents are only in it for the money. That's both flat Earth and creationism. There's a lot of money to be
Vandalia
made.
in 1998 for $5 said creationists have only had 100 plus years to get with the program. Flat Earthers have had 2,000 plus years. You are absolutely correct.
Yeah,
that's right. They've had a long time. And the thing was, most of the educated world has accepted that the Earth is a sphere since since
I think 300
BC.
right? about 300 BC.
300 BC.
Yeah.
It's been a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a pretty darn long time, and they still don't get that. So it's just on them at that point. There's nothing else to be done about that.
We've known that longer than we have known that Jesus was going to come back within one generation. Just saying.
All right. Quote. Here we go. One method of dating determines the amount of radioactive carbon, C14, left in bones, wood, charcoal, or some other once living object. C14 is an unstable element that decays. It is also called radiocarbon and is formed by the activity of cosmic rays on the Earth's atmosphere. Plants absorb C14 from the atmosphere. When man, or animal, eats the plant, his body absorbs the C14 from the plant. At death, this accumulating of C14 in the body stops, and what is already present continues to decay and is not replaced. In about 5,600 years, the C14 is thought to be half gone, so it is said to have a half-life of that time. Thus, scientists take bone, wood, charcoal, or other once-living objects and get an idea of their age by measuring the C14 left. If it is half gone, the object is considered about 5,600 years old. If it is 3/4 gone, it is considered twice that old, and so on. The method is limited because of its short half-life, so items over about 50,000 years cannot be dated by it. What has this C14 dating method revealed when tested on supposedly very old specimens connected with man? The vast majority of such samples showed that the radioactivity was above the halfway point, well within the 6,000-year span allowed for man's existence by the Bible. However, some objects that were dated have indicated man's existence to be somewhat longer than 6,000 years. Do not these estimates prove the time indicated by the Bible wrong? Okay, first of all, can we get rid of that bot in the chat? Close quote, sorry.
The bot is gone.
Can I do that?
I reported it. I reported it and banned it.
They made another chat. It says they made another chat that Nestle.
I saw. Sorry, I accidentally clicked on something and I'm trying to remove it.
Okay,
I'm trying to remove it, but I can't.
That's okay. That's okay. Peter got him. That's fine. All right, so let's talk about that. So it's not simply that the C14 is gone, it's that it has decayed into daughter isotopes. They kind of confuse that. It's not simply like, oh, it's just lacking C14. No, it's the carbon has decayed into other isotopes that are more stable, or if not those, then isotopes which then eventually decay into stable ones. So that's what.
I think it decays into nitrogen, right? Carbon 14.
Yeah, I believe you're right. But yeah. So
can I point can I point out the elephant in the room, please? Because there's something in there in the part that you read that I haven't been aware of that ever happened. Have we ever dated charcoal with C14?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's a. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have.
It's a wood derivative, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Because there are you can date like tree rings and like archaeological sites and stuff, and try to figure out like how old is this, stuff and all that. I would imagine so. No. I mean, if anybody in the chat wants to find an example of charcoal getting dated, feel free to toss that in there, or if it doesn't, then also toss that in there.
Jamie E said, if there's anything else you want me to look up, I'll be ready. So Jamie E, this is you.
Does charcoal get dated?
Yeah, because
go look that up, please.
If you burn something and then start to date it with C14, I'm not entirely sure. I could be wrong.
I think it doesn't.
I think
it doesn't matter. Like yeah.
I think you would be able to date coal. But charcoal seems a little weird. And why did they mention charcoal? I've never seen that mentioned anywhere. I can be wrong, but
I mean, that's why I said we'll toss it to the chat. We'll see what they say. But anyways, so they're not. So I mean, their explanation is not terrible, broadly speaking. So yeah, once you stop taking in the C14, it gradually decays into nitrogen, and you can estimate the approximate time that this organism lived based on that. So within like reasonable error bars, right? Within pretty reasonable. Mm-hmm. And when we had our geochemist friend on Age of Rocks, he pointed out that we can actually date things. We can date historic things with like carbon dating, and that has been tied to the known date of that thing by historical writings.
Mm-hmm.
So it works. We can date historical things to the correct date.
And it was a lot more accurate than we thought. Because I recall that you were pretty surprised how accurate we can do that.
I am very surprised.
I mean,
yeah, he said it was like within a couple of years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We could date it's like the year within a couple of years as the error bar, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, well, we do get better ways of measuring things, so that's probably going to be a big part of it. But even then, and being able to do that and then knowing the actual date and coming close, yeah, then there's nowhere to go for anyone who wants to refute it, because and we also had that before, because didn't they also started out testing and comparing it to dendrochronology, where they had overlapping tree trunks, so they could they can go back extremely far, much further than the oldest tree, which is also a thing that creationists never seem to mention, that we can do that. Because if you have a tree that has lived for a couple of 100 years before the next one died, and you've got overlapping tree rings in both trees, you have a consistent line back.
Jamie E says, yes, it appears that charcoal, I can words, I promise, can and is carbon dated.
Okay.
So thank you. This is why we appreciate you.
This is why we like science.
So yeah, nice. All right. So do we have anything else we want to say about this section? Are we ready to move on to the next one?
I'm ready to move on.
All right. Quote, first of all, it is vital to note that C14 dating is based on several assumptions, a most important one being mentioned at a recent conference of radiocarbon experts. Science Magazine of December 10th, 1965 tells about it. Quote, throughout the conference, emphasis was placed on the fact that laboratories do not measure ages, they measure sample activities. The connection between activity and age is made through a set of assumptions. One of the main assumptions of C14 dating is that the atmospheric radiocarbon level has held steady over the age range to which the method applies, close quote. What would happen if the C14 level in the atmosphere had not remained steady? Science Digest of December 1960 said, quote, it most certainly would ruin some of our carefully developed methods of dating things from the past. If the level of carbon-14 was less in the past due to a greater magnetic shield from cosmic rays, then our estimates of the time that has elapsed since the life of the organism will be too long, close quote. Now then, has the level of radiocarbon remained steady in the past? Science Year of 1966 reported, scientists have found that the C14 concentration in the air and in the sea has not remained constant over the years as originally supposed, close quote. What is often ignored too is the fact that there was a much greater shielding of the atmosphere from cosmic rays about 4,300 years ago. The Bible explains that prior to the time, a vast water canopy was suspended high above the earth, and that its fall caused a global deluge in the days of the man of Noah, who wrote an eyewitness account of the event. The water canopy shielded the atmosphere from cosmic rays to a greater extent than is true today, thus reducing the formation of radiocarbon. That is why objects dated from before that time appear older than they really are, for they did not absorb as much C14 as objects have absorbed since then. Holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap.
Well, there you
There's
have
so
it.
much to talk about.
There you have it. Now we got a lot more work for Jamie E. trying to disprove this. That's going to be hard.
Okay, so first of all, as Age of Rocks told us last week, we don't have to make the assumption that about like the parent-daughter isotope ratios, but also, well, in some sense, he's kind of right. It is about measuring sample activities. That was what he said. He's like, we're not setting out to measure the age of things per se. With carbon dating, we're setting out to measure or to look at how the carbon cycle interacted in this environment or whatever. And it is only by like understanding how the carbon cycle works that we can glean the age of the sample. So I guess that's technically true. Also, it says one of the main assumptions of C14 dating is that the atmosphere radiocarbon level is held steady over the age range to which the method applies. That's only 50,000 years. I'm pretty sure the C14 content of the atmosphere has not changed that much in the past like 50,000 years. But also, as Age of Rocks pointed out, that's something they do have to take that into account for recent dates because of like nuclear testing, for instance. That has changed. Yeah, that has changed the amount of carbon of C14 in the atmosphere. So yeah, they do actually take this into account. This is something they have to be aware of. So that's just wrong. It is just flat wrong. Although it's probably a quote mine. It's probably.
And the fun part of that was that they can really accurate date things from recent times because they can see where the spike starts, where people start, and where on Earth the bombs went off. So that's also taken into account, which, yeah, that was actually pretty interesting. That's another thing that I didn't know and learned last week.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched, watch. What's wrong with you?
Do it.
Yes.
Do it now.
Not now. When we're done. When we're done.
I mean, yeah. When we're done. Do it once we're done. Okay. So what would happen if the atmosphere had not remained steady? Well, we just talked about that. So then, what does he propose? That there was a water canopy over the Earth. Now, this idea is, to put it bluntly, insane. Because I don't know if you've ever held or interacted with water at any point. It doesn't just like sit in the air.
No.
Have you ever had a humid day before?
Right. Water doesn't just like hang out in like in the air. Like
No.
oh my gosh, it's the idea that there was a canopy, of water
Mm-hmm.
over the earth. What does Kent Hovind say? The ice canopy?
Oh yeah, the ice cap. Or
But, like-
an ice shell.
Yeah.
The pressure, the atmospheric pressure needed to sustain either an ice canopy or a water canopy would destroy life on Earth. The
Keep
pressure
in-
would be so
keep in-
great. It would
and-
destroy life on Earth.
Keep in mind, according to the Bible, outside of that canopy is water, which
Right.
is pretty heavy. On what was it? About half an inch thick is what Hovind claims. Yeah,
Yeah, it's insane.
you can try that with ice
I
at
love that
home.
he's. Yeah, try to just hang your ice in the air or just a
Mhm.
bowl of water in the air. Try it. Go ahead. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then they get back to us, tell us how that went, after you've dried yourself off.
Mhm. It's
But yeah,
pretty-
no, this is insane.
it is.
The it just does not work on any level. It just doesn't work. It's so bonkers.
But that's
that they
that's
would
that's what you
propose
get
this.
if people who aren't qualified to do science start doing science.
Yeah.
You get people.
no, that's crazy.
You get people who try to demonstrate that evolution doesn't work. Get in a inflatable boat and start shooting holes in it. That's how they disprove evolution. Ian Juby.
Or maybe sitting on a branch and take out a saw and then cutting off the branch.
Ian
or sitting
Juby.
on.
Ian Juby made a video with that, and he started out with a handgun,
Oh yeah.
and then said, "But keep in mind, according to the evolutionist, this has been going on for billions of years, so we wouldn't have these few holes." And then he comes with an AR-15 and starts shooting the boat.
Ian Juby was the first person who proved junk DNA apparently.
But my favorite claim of all time.
I meant genetic entropy. I meant genetic entropy. Yeah.
No,
Oh, did he?
my favorite claim from Ian Juby was the one with the dinosaur eggs, where he went to Carl Baugh and said, "Here we have a dinosaur nest, and the dinosaur will want to lay its eggs in twos in a circle." And oh, right, is that so, Ian? Oh, how interesting. Yes. And then we found this nest where it has eggs in twos in a row. And he said, you can see this nest was laid just before the flood because the dinosaur laid its eggs in twos, but on the run. So, in a straight line. And if you haven't seen it, go to Potholer54. He made a brilliant video because he recreated the experiment with chickens. Not really,
That's
but
right.
but
Yeah. That was
it-
like, what did it say? Like when they hear rushing water, they start running and lay their eggs on the run.
yeah,
in the perfect line,
yeah.
Yes,
I
in a
mean,
perfect line. Yeah, no, it was.
and they don't roll around. They stay there in a perfect line. Yeah.
honestly, I
Yeah,
miss
every part of that was amazing.
I miss Ian Juby, but he's got a new career. He's a
That's right, train spotting.
He's a train
Yeah.
spotter now, which he was before he was a scientist. Funny enough. He does a lot
Yeah,
less harm.
that's wonderful.
He does a lot less harm. And 9 out of 10 times
That's
he will
probably true.
he will go visit a track that's no longer in use. I'm not sure how that's train spotting, but according to him it is.
That's I feel like that's almost poetic,
It is.
right? Like he doesn't get his science right, he doesn't get the train spotting right.
Yeah. But I do miss him.
He's like,
That's still on my bucket list, talking to Ian Juby. That would make my day. If someone can arrange that for me, please. Definitely.
I think it's really funny that both a bit of orange and long story short both got snapped up by creationist organizations after we talked to them. I think
Oh.
that's so funny because a bit of orange is working with Eric Hovind now, or he was at some point. And now, long story short, is like the video guy for the Discovery Institute. So I guess we made their careers for them. There you go.
Yeah, long story short, to start like on a whole on like abiogenesis.
Wait a minute, but
Yeah.
the Discovery Institute wasn't that the institute that wanted to say intelligent design is not creationism, and so they hired a creationist.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is correct. Yes.
Long story short, affirms he's not a creationist. He's
did he?
an ID
Okay.
proponent. I think
Fair
so.
enough, I guess. Well, he said traditional ages, which is also what Meyer said. Now, I don't know, because the ID proponents will be like, yeah, the Earth is old. We're not creationists, except for the ones who are actually young Earth creationists, like Tim Clary. But then the other ones are like,
he did it in a response to your video, like the Discovery Institute are not hiding anything. They are not. They're just being honest in trying to like go against the establishment or something. Like,
laughs in wedge document.
there's a joke.
Waving the badger.
There's a joke in there somewhere. What is C design proponencist spelled backwards? Well, long story short,
yeah, it was interesting. The reason, if anyone's wondering, we had a series of back and forths with him.
Oh yeah,
because we actually chatted with him at one point, and then we did a series where we were responding to him about his whale videos, and I'll say a couple other comments he made momentarily, but I want to get this out of the way first. Nestling and Rational Mind wrote another response, but I just did not want to engage with long story short anymore. And the reason for that was, if anyone's wondering if they care, because this was like, what, 2 years ago, something like that. So we made a response because one of the things he said was he talked about how he was trying to make a whole argument about how actually there aren't enough synapomorphies plesiomorphies, I guess, between pachycetids and ambulocetids and modern whales to say that they're all related. And then we literally just listed plesiomorphies between these guys which indicate why pachycetids and ambulocetids are cetaceans and not some other group. We just listed them, like a whole bunch of them. Well, his next response, and that took up 14 minutes of our video. 14 minutes going through this list. His next response to us skipped the whole first 14 minutes.
Right.
He just did not respond to it. And on the one hand, I wanted to be petty and be like, I guess we won then. You're just kind of gave up. Which, what else can you do at that point? But at the same time, I was like, he's obviously so dishonest and such a disingenuous actor that I don't think he's worth our time.
I also think he's now also getting influenced by getting talking points directly from the Discovery Institute at this point.
Yeah. No, he's not like, this isn't the first thing he did was the Darwin's doubt, where he was just rehashing Meyer stuff. But then when we were doing the video, when he was talking about like why the La Meseta formation at Telm 4 was like, was actually way older than what the paleontologists say it is. He was using arguments that I'm 95% sure he was like getting from someone else. I'm pretty sure someone was feeding him those talking points, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is he's just not an honest actor. He's disingenuous. And just to give you an idea, the other things he said was he thought or thinks the duckbill platypus, is an actual chimera of different mammals and birds. He actually thinks the bill is that of a duck's, that the body is that of an otter's, and that it has flippers like that of a duck, that the tail is like that of a beaver. Not that they're like these things, that these are the actual things. It is actually a duck's beak and actually a beaver's tail. And I don't think I need to explain why that's wrong.
Mhm.
I'll let you figure it out, guys. But the other thing he did was he also said, because when he said, how is it we can find pachycetids after ambulocetids if pachycetids are the direct evolutionary ancestor of ambulocetids, which they aren't, but whatever. To which we responded, well, that's the why are there still monkeys argument. You're just asking why does this lineage continue even though there are its descendants are also around. And his response, no joke, I'm not making this up, you can go watch the video. His response was, and I quote, I don't understand why that's a bad question. So he does not understand why the why are there still monkeys argument is wrong.
Yeah.
And he is the head video guy for the Discovery Institute. That's who they hired.
In all fairness, being the head video guy on this
They're
channel,
back. Peter, they're back.
Okay,
They're back in the chat.
I got him.
Oh,
So being the head video guy on this channel, and so you can't have a head video guy who doesn't know an awful lot about science. So maybe he found his spot at the Discovery Institute where he just gets told, this is what you say, and now get back to work and make the video. Possible.
Because he makes cute animations. His animations were good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to knock that. They're good animations.
Good. Yeah.
He is abysmal in direct conversation. He avoided pretty quickly avoided to have a conversation with me. Like I was trying to get him on the League of Reason forum.
Oh, League of Reason, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yes, and but I saw him have a conversation with Whisper in the comments, and at one point he was like, let me see here, I can quote him, like, your reasoning here is incorrect because gain of function mutations tend to require multiple simultaneous changes to work. And then CRISPR was like, this claim you've made doesn't appear to be supported by current data. Alteration of regulation can occur with a single mutation. In fact, every random stretch of DNA of reasonable length will contain dozens of sequences, one mutation away from a consensus binding motif. Thus, a single base mutation can do alter genetic regulation in a variety of ways, able to canalize expression patterns as such. So these are necessarily gain of function mutations. And then, long story was basically like, I can read this. Your second remark amounts to semantics.
Your second remark amounts to semantics.
Yes. And so should I continue? Should I continue to read it?
Feel free. So which video is that under?
I think under the I think it's under the antibiotics video. Maybe it's already deleted or something.
On the Discovery Institute channel.
And I think under his own channel.
Oh, okay. Under long story short. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys.
I made screenshots. So yeah.
Oh, good, awesome. But yeah, he's a dishonest actor. He clearly does not know or understand these talking points. We also went through the waiting time problem. He didn't understand why that just didn't work. We went through, what was the other one that he pulled up? Oh, he didn't understand why you can get low bootstrap values for phylogenies. He was like, aha, look, it's a low probability. Well, yeah, you're going to have trees that have low probabilities because there are millions of trees. He's like, no, this disproves evolution. Like, no, it doesn't. That's how you make the trees. That's how this works. And he did not
get you show my screen, Peter?
Nestle, that doesn't work because we run the show through OBS, so there's no way for me to. The screen sharing is in StreamYard, so that doesn't work.
All right. I just read the continuation. Like he says, your second remark amounts to semantics.
If you Nestle, shoot me the link in the private chat.
Oh, sure.
That would work.
Sure. He says binding motifs where where a protein binds to a given stretch of DNA are usually 8 to 22 nucleotides in length. This is orders of magnitude shorter than the length of DNA sequence and complexity necessary for the protein that binds to that motif. So he's basically saying like, oh, it's just trivial to get a binding motif. I'm asking you to give a protein. Like basically, he's moving the goalpost. Yeah,
well, of course he is. Of course he is. Yeah. Well, anyway. So let's.
Now I have it pulled up.
Let's.
So now we don't have to show it.
Well, we're at the 2 hour mark. So.
Okay.
Do you guys have anything you want to shill before we head off?
As Neslic's the guest, I'll let Neslic go first.
All right, Nestle, got anything to shill?
I have not. I have not nothing else to say. I think
Okay.
like I will like perhaps not it's not settled yet, but I will be doing a presentation on Van Dalia's channel at some point on amphibians.
Okay.
So yeah. So if you have time to join, you can join. So yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Fantastic.
All right.
Peter, what's going on over on your end?
And here is where the Dutch have similar ideas. Jackson, how are you with free time?
Not great. The semester has started.
Not great. So I have
The semester has begun. I have 2 jobs and classes.
Mm-hmm. So, well,
what is it, Peter? What is it?
So I was hoping to have you on my channel for about an hour and a half. Would that be possible, or do I?
It would have to be in the evening. It would probably have to be in the evening, depending on the day. If that works for you.
See, what time is it? It is evening now, right? Okay.
For me, yes, it's 9 p.m. Yeah.
Now I'm going to, spoiler alert, reading glasses. Yeah, I think that might work. So the problem is I have a guest, and it's a young Earth creationist, and he really wants to have a decent conversation about evolution and about what we actually know. I've talked with this guy several times on a very, very distinguished channel that you might know, Praise I Am That I Am.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
But he's one of the few people who will join, but he's in New Zealand. So I've looked. If his time zone is anywhere near Australia, and I'm not sure if he would be on the East Coast or the West Coast, but then it would be possible for him to join in the morning and for you to join in the evening, and then actually make this happen, because he does get up early every once in a while, and then for you that would be in the evening. For me it would be in the middle of the night. But
okay, yeah. Give me a tentative date for that, and
we'll
work it out, Peter.
We'll have to juggle around your schedule then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the easiest way to do it. So that was one thing.
That's fine.
That I was hoping that I would.
Yeah, just tell me like what day of the week, or a date for that, and then we'll hammer it out. So that should be okay.
Okay.
Also, super chat from Vandalia 1998 for $2. Am I a PhD with a doctorate? No, I am not. I am approaching, I hope, the end of my master's program. This semester is my last semester of classes for the master's program. That is assuming I pass everything, I guess. And then I just have to finish my thesis, and then I'll be done with my master's program. So easier said than done, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to go on to, I hope, a PhD program. So there's that, I guess.
And you're planning to at the same university? Are you planning to do that, the PhD, or
no? They don't. There are no PhD programs anywhere near where I live. So I'll have to go somewhere else. Alas. So
Europe.
So okay.
Europe.
Yeah, we'll see. We shall see. Technically, you would never call me Dr. Jackson. I would be Dr. Wheat. That's Dr. Charles Jackson.
Peter is hoping he will be able to do these streams when it's not in the middle of the night.
Wait a minute. Wasn't that a song a long time ago? See, here's where my age will show. The Miami Sound Machine didn't they made a song Dr. Wheat, Dr. Wheat. We have to make that song. No, it was Dr. Beat, but only the old people will get that.
Oh man,
I recently bumped into a guy who actually can, and this is if there are any content creators watching that are struggling. I've bumped into a guy who can actually make music specific for people's channels. So if you want to get in touch with this guy, just shoot me a DM or an email or whatever. I'm pretty easy to find because I want to hook this guy up with several channels so he can get his music out. If you want to have a sample on Ra's series of debunking Genesis, which is the last one came out this week. The end credits are done by this guy, and he can do pretty much any genre, and he will talk to you and make things specific for people. So I really like it when we can have a community and we can help each other out. So.
Absolutely. That is the best part of the interwebs, is having this community where we can share our collective knowledge.
And he's the first to actually come up with a song that Arn said, I want to use that for my end credits. And he used it literally within 24 hours. So, and I know Arn is kind of specific when it comes to music. It has to fit him or he won't use it. So, yeah, this guy nailed it. Has to be
death metal.
Dark heavy metal.
Yeah, dark heavy metal. And so this guy apparently did a good job. So,
well, awesome. All right. Well, on that note, we are going to bounce out. So thank you, Nestle, for coming. We appreciate you being on. Feel free to come on in the future, of course.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, Peter, for hosting and co-hosting, and
anytime.
Thank you everybody in the live chat for watching. We appreciate all of you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you aren't already.
And participating with the links.
Yes, and thank you for participating with the links. We always appreciate it. So, all right. Well, good night, everybody.
See y'all.